Hello, welcome to the 1 to 11 podcast, where this is a squad building challenge where I, Paul, and my brother John,
hello,
will be looking to write a love letter to football. Now, the way we'll be doing this is there's no qualification here, there's no ranking here, there's no one thing is better than the other here. What we want to do is talk about the players that mean something to us against the challenge. So, as we mentioned in the last episode, we're going to be doing a bit of a focus around the Premier League. And I felt we've been doing too much of a focus on the 90s, 2000s and early 2010s.
What? That's the bit I'm looking forward to.
Exactly. So, what I'd like to do is focus on something more modern. So I'd like to try part one of two. So this week I would like to look at the players you'd pick for the Premier League from last season, but there's a caveat. Dun, dun, dun. You can only pick one player from a club.
Ooh.
So get that grey matter firing.
Cool.
So if I could start. Now, me personally, I'm a filthy old Englishman. I have to go for the flat 4-4-2.
I'm going 4-2-3-1, as is in vogue in the Premier League.
That is a Premier League formation.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can't acknowledge that because there are no other formations.
You see, I played my first 11-a-side game recently, and I will say there's a reason 4-4-2 isn't used very often. It's really hard to play.
Yeah.
It's so tiring. We started the first half. We started 4-4-2, and it was like, oh my god! Especially in the heat. We're recording this. It's the hottest day of the year so far as we record this. By the time hopefully by the time we release this, things are cooler. But
it's in the 30 degrees centigrade.
It's been 36, 37 where we are today. It's still quite late at night, and it's still 30 degrees. But you know, it's we can't moan because the Women's Euros is on right now as well, and I'm very much enjoying that.
And also, if the World Cup were on at the same time, it would lose its importance. And I think it's been wonderful.
It's been brilliant. It's been great. I hope anyone who's listening to this has also been paying attention to the Women's Euros, because I'd like to come back to it in a couple of weeks. But anyway, so
let's start with the keepers.
Yes.
So I'm going to put mine forward first. Let's get one of those clubs out the way that I wanted to get out early. But also someone who I think is a very, very talented keeper, which is Robert Sanchez from Brighton.
Ooh. I didn't pick Robert Sanchez, but actually he had a really good year. Like, he started the season at the Euros, didn't he? He was with the Spain team.
He was a semi-finalist, yeah.
I went also with a Spaniard.
David De Gea?
I went with David De Gea, who, after a couple of ropey years, has really returned to form with Man United.
It's amazing what competition breathing down your neck will do.
I don't know if it is. I think possibly just a bit of confidence. I think I don't know if he'd been one of those players that had sort of been Mourinho'd or whatever else. But yeah, he's really come back to something approaching the form he was showing a few years ago, where he was in the top 5 goalkeepers in the world. And he, possibly not there because I think times have moved on, but he is still brilliant. And also, really, this season was the only Man United player I could pick.
I've picked another.
Yeah, we'll argue this week. I'm sure when they come up.
So, I'm then going to go to a right back. So I've gone for Tino Livramento from Southampton.
I've also gone with Tino Livramento. A transfer that I didn't really notice. Obviously joined from Chelsea. Obviously, being a Leeds fan, I did pay more attention to their games this year, which was bleak. But especially one of the games was he absolutely tore us apart. This, I guess, it's one of the downsides of the Chelsea sort of youth system and their way they just hold on to players is, especially when you have sort of a riches of Reece James coming through to your team, in a team which is already full of internationals, there isn't a space for everyone. And Tino Livramento is one of the players who's moved on. I'm sure with a buyback clause, but the pace he has is astounding, absolutely astounding.
Because the one thing England needed was another viable right back.
I know. Yeah. He's another English right back. He's still only 19, so he can be in the 21s for another couple of years. Of course, by then, Trent will be 27 and
in the prime of his career.
Reece James will be
26,
25, I mean, let's, as well, I did, not knowing the transfer and seeing Livramento at right back for Southampton, I was like, oh, where's he from? And realised Croydon. But he's got a Portuguese father. But I think, I mean, he's one of those players. You look at him, they're £25 million buyback if they want to get him Chelsea. But if he can keep fit, you would imagine the sky's the limit for him.
He's fantastic, and I think I like what Southampton are doing in terms of looking young, because they bought like Romeo Lavia from City, and he is going to be amazing.
Yeah. Another right back I did want to choose was Lamptey, but
he had an injury.
He had an injury-plagued season, and you'd already picked a Brighton player. I've got a Brighton player elsewhere, so
I know exactly who it is.
Sure. Well, do you want me to move to left back and go through it? Because it's Mark Cucurella, who, once again, the transfer, I think 13 million quid they paid for him, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Sort of got a David Luiz style haircut, which maybe helps him get noticed, I guess. But just an absolute ball of activity and creativity, and like you can tell as well, like he's come through La Masia. Like the guy can, he can play. As well. He's part of a. I guess he's probably a left wing back, maybe, but part of a very good Brighton defence. Which Robert Sanchez is part of. They don't let in many goals.
Also, he's versatile. Sorry.
Yeah, he can play at centre back as well.
Yeah, and there's a reason, man. The league champions are interested in buying him.
Well, yeah, he's going to be the left-sided Kyle Walker for them.
Terrifying, really, isn't it?
Which, I mean, God, the pace in that team if he ends up moving, which he will. He also got his first Spain cap last year. So good for him.
That's your left back. I've gone for a left back who's just been capped by his country for the first time. I've gone for Tyreek Mitchell from Crystal Palace.
I like Tyreek Mitchell, so yeah.
Part of Crystal Palace's seemingly never-ending conveyor belt of fullbacks they seem to have.
Yeah. I know the I guess the Man U youth system gets a lot of praise for obviously what it did in the 90s, and it still has this sort of steady drip of players. Maybe not expected, but Palace's youth system is fantastic. Like who it's brought through, you have had Tyreek Mitchell, you've had
Wan-Bissaka,
Zaha,
Nathaniel Klein. All these,
I forgot about Nathaniel Klein, who for a year was banging on the sort of England door. But yeah, no, I will fully admit I forgot Tyreek Mitchell in this team. But I think basically because Cucurella was my first name on the sheet, because he was my favourite player.
Yeah, and you want to get Brighton in because of the challenge.
Exactly. But yeah, there you go. He joined Palace because Brentford didn't have an academy.
Wow.
They shut theirs down, and they just picked off and what a mistake to make.
Yeah.
So who have you got in the centre defence?
This is where I've picked two big players, because if you're talking Ruben Diaz at City is the one of the top 3 centre backs in the Premier League.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion. If you disagree, let us know. I don't think there'll be many people who do.
No.
He just has a level of calm on the ball, and he's everything you'd want from a centre back. He's classy, he's big, he's strong, he's got everything you want.
Yeah, who you got next to him?
Virgil van Dijk.
Because I've got Virgil van Dijk. Because if Ruben Diaz is in the top 3, I think Van Dijk's in the top 1. I think there's a reason Liverpool are great, and the front 3, and the best player on their team is Virgil van Dijk.
Everything is allowed because of him. And also, the thing that makes it special for me in terms of last season was coming back from injury. I'm not really missing a beat.
No, not at all. I think when you think about the best defenders in the Premier League era, you're talking like Jaap Stam and
Terry
Ferdinand.
Vidic.
There was when you especially Stam and Vidic, there was a fear of them, and it got to a point last season. You'd see forwards get the ball, and quick forwards, you'd be like, run at him. He's coming back from a knee injury. Run at him. And they wouldn't. They would wait, try to move the ball on. And I do think he's one of those players, he's beat you before he's even tried to do anything. It's amazing to watch. It's annoying because I'm not a Liverpool fan, but I think he could be. He's going to be up there with some of the best defenders that we've ever seen in the Premier League. And I guess it's unfortunate for him. He's coming up against Pep Guardiola's Man City team, who are just running away with things. And Liverpool are getting close every year, but they're just not there. But next to him, I've gone with Antonio Rudiger.
Yeah, and there's a reason he's joined the best team in European football.
Yeah, he was very, very good for Chelsea. Had a bit more physicality than Thiago Silva. It will be interesting to see what he does next season without Thiago Silva, because I've always thought of Rudiger as having a bit of an error in him, and this year he didn't have that.
But he's going to be playing alongside David Alaba,
who isn't Thiago Silva. Let's see. But he was brilliant last year in a Chelsea team that I think will be disappointed that they finished third, but well off.
I think everything that happened with Abramovich affected them.
They weren't close still before then, but that didn't help.
No,
they really went off.
And also that kind of made them lose Rudiger. That made them made them lose Christensen, and they might Koulibaly replacing them. Wow.
Yeah.
What's a signing? But
it's what Chelsea do very good. They do regenerate teams, but let's see. So, midfield.
Okay.
Let's start in the centre of midfield, because I've got 3 centre midfielders. You've got 2, and then I've got sort of wingers. So in the centre of midfield, I've got from Crystal Palace, Gallagher.
Great player.
Conor Gallagher. Once again, had an England call-up this year.
A well-deserved England call-up. It'd be interesting to see Palace without him, and it'd also be interesting to see what Chelsea do with him.
Yes. And unfortunately, being Chelsea, I get the feeling I don't want to see him Loftus-cheeked.
I don't think he could get Loftus-cheeked, because Loftus-Cheek did very well at Fulham, but he didn't do as well as Gallagher did at Palace.
But Loftus-Cheek was very good at Palace. He was at the last World Cup.
But I think
I agree. I think as well. I think it's a different coach. So now it's Tuchel. I do think he might have a bit more balls to throw in the youth players.
also, if you'd have said to Chelsea, a Chelsea fan 5 years ago, you'll have a midfield of Conor Gallagher and Mason Mount, they'd have probably laughed at you.
Well, I remember at the start of the season, like Leeds were interested in him, and it became very clear at the start he didn't want to leave London, which is fair enough. But as well, it became very clear that there was going to be no option to buy, which was never going to happen.
He was their youth player of the season.
Yeah,
prior to going there, he's always had a great reputation with
Chelsea. He was very good in a rubbish West Brom team as well. A West Brom team that did nothing to help him. So it was he was absolutely brilliant last year, and I hope to see him get decent time. I think Chelsea are going to have enough games to think as well. You might be thinking, I think Jorginho's coming to the end of his contract. It might be time to think, let's see what the new kid can do.
Also, Jorginho loves being there. He's come out publicly to say that.
Yeah, so maybe
because wherever Allegri or Sarri's going, they're waiting.
Yeah. So, who have you got next to? Who have you got in midfield? Sorry, centre midfield.
First player I've got is Ruben Neves.
I was tempted with Neves.
Why are no clubs more interested in him? Why are Man United doing this intense portrayal and hounding of Frankie de Jong, who's better than Neves? Don't get me wrong, but when you've got Ruben Neves, who apparently is available for 14 million, we're looking for somebody stylish who can play in the hole. Hi.
Yeah. Yeah, the guy's a stud.
Yeah.
25, only just turned 25, start 25, in March. I mean, yeah.
Everything you want.
Can do, he can play simple, he can progress the ball. He's got a lovely shot on him. He's got 2 years on his contract, which might be. If I was Wolves, I'd be saying, this is the summer now to sign or move on. Maybe they just want too much money, but I think he'd anyone in the top six. No disrespect to Wolves, but Arsenal could do with him.
There's no
Man United could do with him.
There's no team in the top six that would be worse with him in that starting lineup.
No, exactly that. No, absolutely wonderful player. Who have you got next to Ruben Neves?
Someone who I thought did a phenomenal job coming in January, which is Bruno Guimaraes.
I was tempted with Guimaraes, but I went with someone else. But I think he had a very good sort of second half of the year, but only because he had a second half of the year, I didn't pick him. But no, he was. He's intriguing, isn't he? Like, I sort of, because of where the money's coming from, I'm not a fan of the Newcastle project.
No, me neither.
But the fact that they're able to bring him from Lyon for like about 40 million quid, wasn't it? Or 40 million euros, 40 million quid. That's a huge sign of intent, and I still think at 40 million quid, that's a bargain.
Oh, I agree with you. I think his opinion on potential, the sports washing and everything else on another podcast, right? But the one thing is, you're getting quality players, and he's a quality player. He clearly made them better from the moment he arrived.
Yeah.
And I think because of that difference, a bit like when Bruno Fernandes joined us in United, you just saw an uptick in play from him coming into the team. So essentially, buy a midfielder with the name Bruno.
Yes.
And you're in in January, and you're in for a good season.
Well, let's see if he has the same impact in year two, because apart from Botman, I can't. It's been a bit stale.
Give them time.
Oh, I'm sure they will, but I don't in the most positive thing I'm saying is I don't care.
Yeah.
But no, Bruno Guimaraes, I was tempted with him. If I was going to put in a Newcastle player, it would have been. I know the right back, whose name now escapes me, the England right back, Trippier. When he was fit, he was quite impactful, but he wasn't fit enough. And yeah, Guimaraes, I think it was a different gravy. But a player in my midfield who was basically run into the ground by his team was, for me, Declan Rice.
Very much so.
I mean, he was. Hopefully, the fact he's been able to have a summer break because there is no World Cup is going to be beneficial to both West Ham and England because he's so class.
He does the basics really well.
He does the basics very well, but also, like, you know, he's a powerful runner, and he can sort of take the ball past the player. It's really he makes there isn't a bit of excitement when he gets the ball, which for a sort of player who a couple of years ago, and we're going, oh, is he a better defender or is he a better midfielder? And you look at him now and you go, well, there's no question he's a midfielder.
All day.
And was brilliant at the last Euros alongside Calvin. But yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Declan Rice. I think, no disrespect to West Ham, I do think a big move is in the offing for him at some point. At the moment, I just don't think there's anyone really, apart from Man City, who don't need him, who can afford him.
I agree with you. Yeah.
So that's my midfield of Conor Gallagher, Declan Rice. Who have you got on your
Respective wings? Very unsurprising players. I've got Bukayo Saka on the right mid.
Same.
Just you've clearly got a right wing, haven't you?
Yeah, I've got him on the right wing.
Just someone who had a really positive Euros again, and just again, you know, in terms of what Arsenal do, and clearly Arteta loves him, and you can see why. He's somebody who plays with a smile on his face. He's forward thinking in what he does, and you know, he really came into his own. He's a special player.
Yeah,
and he's still so young.
Yeah, he's 20,
and yeah. You know, it's scary to think how good that man's going to be in 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Just hope he doesn't get injured.
I gotta hope not. Yeah, I mean, he had a quiet start to the season, I guess, maybe because the Euros. But he's, once again, like, he's an exciting player to watch. Really is. Like, you know, there is a bit of you see him on the right wing, you know he's going to cut in, but stop it. You can't. He's brilliant. You know, he's been player of the year at Arsenal 2 years in a row. Last person to do that, Thierry Henry.
Exactly.
You know, that's exalted. I know that probably the squad isn't as good as it was then, but you know, still, I think there's an interesting project going on at Arsenal. But yeah, I still think that of all the players coming in, everything else, Saka's the most exciting player in that team by a long way.
And also, I like what Arsenal are doing now, because bit of a tangent here, but you take I probably mispronounced his name, but Benatia, AC Milan.
Yeah,
came through the Arsenal youth system, didn't make the grade. Donyell Marlon.
Yeah,
came through the Arsenal youth system, didn't make the grade. Serge Gnabry came through the Arsenal youth system, didn't make the grade. Jeff Rayner Adelaide.
Yeah.
Came through the Arsenal youth system and didn't make the grade. If you were to buy those 4 players now, 200 million?
I mean, yeah. I mean, isn't Gnabry upset because his wage at Bayern Munich they've offered him less than £300,000 a week?
Yeah.
And like,
he's gone from not being good enough for Arsenal and not being good enough for Tony Pulis.
Yeah.
To being the centre point of Germany's attack at a tournament.
Yeah, and like, there is something very interesting going on at Arsenal.
Saka's the player that 3 or 4 years ago would have been moved on.
Well, I do have this feeling that next season, I think Pep would be looking at him because they've moved Sterling on this year. I wonder if maybe next year you might see someone like Mahrez move out, and what they'll do is they'll bring through Saka, with their unlimited funds, quite frankly. Which should be, I hope, sort of for competition's sake, I hope not, but you could see Pep really loving him, but hopefully Arsenal make the step needed to keep him.
Yeah.
On your left wing,
Son.
Yeah. Sort of, I don't know, like, I get, when I talk about Son, there's a bit where someone goes, is he sort of underrated? And I wonder if he's probably the most underrated player in the world, or if it's just a really boring conversation, and we just should enjoy him whilst we can, because he's just, like, in the last couple of seasons, like, I don't think there's been a standout, like, player of the year. And generally when that happens, it goes to like a De Bruyne or a Salah, because I do wonder if Son should receive a little bit more respect, because in like individual things mean very little really in the end of it, but a player of the year actually would be very warranted for him. He's been brilliant.
Tottenham have improved tremendously, and obviously, well, we talk about what we're doing in the next show. He's improved tremendously, the Tottenham squad of Conte, but he seems to be a really big fan of Son and seems to be directing more play through him, which is great to see.
You would. He has, you look at what Conte wants, and I think it's a sort of mix of work rate and quality, and he has
bags of both.
So
I think also, just in terms of from what you see on social media and what you hear people say, he just seems like a really nice guy as well.
Yeah. But I think he has a nasty streak in him.
You have to be.
And I think, it sort of gets forgotten. But I think there is a nastiness, like a competitiveness, not nastiness, that runs through. But yeah, I think it makes him all the better. Okay, before you move on to your forwards, then I'll include my central attacking midfielder.
Okay.
Kevin De Bruyne.
Yeah, he's all right.
Basically,
that guy's all right.
In my team, I thought I'd better probably include one of the best 3 or 4 players in the world right now.
He has no weakness.
Fitness, maybe. He doesn't play...
exposure to the sun.
Yeah. Yes. We're really, like, that's about it. He's just if you give him space, he'll score from 35 yards against you. If you press him, he'll
get past you. If you try anything else, he'll pass the ball around you.
Yeah.
He has everything you'd want in a midfielder. He genuinely has no weakness.
Some players are brilliant, and it doesn't show in the stats. Like, Xavi. I always think Xavi and Iniesta, they used to provide the pass before the pass.
But also, they bought... Xavi and Iniesta were there before it became truly like stats on everything.
Yeah, but you look at stats, De Bruyne is just ahead of everything. Like assists, goals from midfield. He was Man City's top scorer last year. And he didn't play that, all the season, because of course he came into the season with an injury, didn't he?
Yeah, I think also it's scary to think what he's going to do with Haaland.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, defences should be quite scared. Who have you got up front?
The first person I have is Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, but I was frustrated with the media coverage with him to begin with, because, can he still do it? He just tore a strip out of Serie A. he was scoring 30 goals a season in Serie A. For him to come into a United team who aren't great
No.
and still be one of the top scorers in the league, still get phenomenal goals of just high quality, and just, again, he saved Man United from some... He turned losses into wins. He turned, losses into draws, draws into wins. He's still a fantastic player. I know it shouldn't be a surprise. Multiple Ballon d'Or winner has a good season.
Yeah. I don't think he had a particularly good season. But
he did what he needed to do.
I
Apart
think...
from finishing in the top 4. But you can't
well, that's... I think you get what... Expecting Ronaldo to come in and do the sort of modern thing of pressing, it just isn't going to happen. But if you want a guy to go in and score goals, I mean, yeah, that's it, you know. But you have to sort of play around him.
Or build a team that's purely designed around servicing him.
Or not even servicing him, covering the fact that he isn't going to chase back. And I don't think Man United have done that.
Yeah. And you look at how... I know it's a pre-season tour, but...
I mean, it means nothing. It's pre-season, but...
we look a different team without him being served.
Well, I like... To me, the exciting thing is, for Man United, is the team looks like it's getting their head around the Ten Hag demands.
Stop passing it backwards. Everything must move forward.
Well, that's it. And I think that basically it's not Ronaldo's fault that Man United have been rudderless for so long. Yeah. And under the circumstances, he didn't have a bad season last year. In a season where the position I found hardest was forward. Because once I'd picked De Bruyne, meant I couldn't have Salah or Mane. I'd picked De Bruyne. I mean, Man City don't really have a forward, but I couldn't have Jesus, for instance.
Mahrez, Sterling,
yeah, they're wingers.
All of these great players.
I picked Son because he was the best player in the league last year.
Yep.
And man, I couldn't pick Kane. And you're like, I don't know where you're sort of going, Brozier? Val Jimenez?
Can I give you my other one?
Go on.
Jamie Vardy.
I went with Jamie Vardy.
So, a man who, by all statistics, there's always this kind of, this is the seasonal drop-off. He can't be the player he was. A little chink in his armour with some injury, but just so reliable.
15 league goals.
Not played
25 games.
Name a club who would be unhappy with that return.
I mean, I think the fact is the Leicester had this and still were like in a sort of very boring mid-season position. They never looked like challenging even for Europe really this year, did they? I think that the Leicester are like one of the most disappointing teams of the year.
It looked like they had so much to do because they came in on this crest of a wave after the FA Cup, and when you're starting in the Europa League early,
yes,
nobody does well out of that season.
No, but yeah, I went with Vardy because it seems no forward had a good year. Like Ings got his move to Villa, injured.
Yeah, now looking apparently to be moved out of there.
Bamford got his England call-up last season. I think he scored 17 goals last year. Injured. Mostly, literally, I think, played about 6-7 games for Leeds. Lacazette scored
2 goals.
Piffling amount of goals.
Aubameyang left.
Yeah.
Lukaku failed to deliver.
Really disappointing.
Failed to deliver.
Yeah. It's been a... Rashford
was injured.
He was injured, but even when he wasn't injured, he looks like he needs confidence rebuilding.
They need to play him as a centre forward.
I think my tip. I think he's in for a good year this year.
I think he'll love Ten Hag.
Yeah.
Seeing what Ten Hag did with Anthony and
Yeah.
what he did with Ziyech and Rashford's a great.
And then it got to a point I was like, oh well, Antonio actually was. He's a very good forward, but
he's not.
I couldn't pick him over Declan Rice.
And also, you're looking at some of the players available. Vardy was phenomenal.
Vardy was better than all of them. So yeah, that was part one of this episode. We're going to come back, for you in a couple of days, and we're going to pick the same system, but players we're looking forward to seeing next season.
Absolutely.
For part two. We'll see you very soon.
See you then.